Now, we must tell you in our analysis, we do not make the errors that others do. Anytime you make an analysis of an oppressed people in any aspect of their life and you leave out the enemy, you will never come to a correct analysis. On the contrary, you will blame the oppressed for all of their problems. Therefore, we tell you from the very beginning, we've never taken the line of others that the biggest problem that we have is we ourselves. No, our biggest problem is our enemy, capitalism, and it must be destroyed. We say any analysis you make of an oppressed people must include the oppressor, otherwise you will come up with an incorrect analysis blaming the oppressed for their position of oppression. Even if one were to talk about the drugs in our community, if you just talk about drugs and not talk about the enemy, you make no analysis at all. Or you may sound serious saying about, well, you know, the trouble with our kids is that all they're doing is fighting for drugs and shooting each other for drugs, and I wish they would stop. If you haven't brought in the question of who brings the drugs in, why the drugs are brought in, for what purpose they're brought in, you will never understand the problem at all. Thus, we make it clear to each and every one, when we speak of the conditions of the African masses, we begin from the very beginning with the enemy of the African masses, all unjust system that seeks to exploit us, capitalism, and especially the racist capitalist system in the United States of America.
What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome back. We are back. Nick and Nike. It's good to be back after a week hiatus. After my trip to Seattle, welcome, my friends, my family. We have a lot to talk about. Powerful clip, as always, from our brother Kwame Ture. Listen to that man. Listen to that man. We have, for this episode, since I'm back at Nick at Night, I'm thinking about maybe doing this 2 times a week. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat if you enjoy this time slot, if you enjoy this vibe of this show, because I think we'll do a little bit more evening shows. We see. RBN is looking to do big things this year. So show some love in the comments. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. We about to get started. You guys know I'm going to introduce my great friend, our producer, our honorary RBN member as well. Welcome to Nick and Night. Zoya is love. Zoya is life. We also have a few more guests. Zoya, you there?
Yes, so happy to join you, my friend. I'll let you introduce everyone else.
You guys know, since I'm back at Nick at Night after 2 weeks off, you guys know after 2 weeks off, I had to bring the whole crew. I was like, man, I ain't doing it by myself today. Bring the whole crew with us today. My man, Andrew, when I was down in Seattle, he's a comrade down there I met. Showed me a good time. There we go. There you are, Andrew. What's poppin'? Good to have you back on RBN. We had Andrew on a few times at Nick at Night. And I always recommend meet your mutuals, meet your comrades that you meet online. Because me and Andrew had a good time. Good to have you back on the show, Andrew.
Thanks, Nick. It's good to see you in person one time. I got
back
to Mexico time for the rain. So
I don't know, Andrew. Try to change your take the headphones. You may have to take those off. Try to reboot. The audio was really weird for me. You don't really need.
All right, how's that?
Yeah. You don't really need earphones that much on StreamYard. Sometimes it messed it up. Oddly enough. Good to have you back, though.
Sometimes I just put them in because it gets loud.
Yeah, I get you.
I'm used to a couple busy streets.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, good to be back on. It was good to meet you in person for a sec. It was good luck. We were both in town.
Yeah.
I just got back to Mexico just in time for it to start raining. So
what was you doing with the please forgive me, was it the Cherokee? You was doing some organizing in South Dakota. You came from doing that.
Yeah, that's why I went back to the U.S. was to do a bit of work. I work with another organization called People of the Confluence. It's an indigenous group, and we do all everything's frozen.
Yeah, Andrew going in now. Hopefully we get that fixed. I know how it is because we have.
Yeah, sorry. I think my Wi-Fi just cut out for a sec. But I'll have a lot more to say about that trip pretty soon. I'll be releasing some interviews in a few weeks. But that was my first time going out to Pine Ridge. It's a reservation mostly of Oglala and Lakota, and it's there's so much I could say. I mean, there's like
I saw the pictures and videos and stuff. It was super cool. We got to talk about that.
But I mostly went to do a workshop for medicine making and also just to help out. It was my first time going. I'm kind of newer to the group, but yeah, I'll definitely have more to share about that trip in the coming weeks and months.
And we also got to add on. I'll put the names up so you guys can see them. Also, a good friend, honorary RBN member as well. He also manages our social media pages as well. Welcome to RBN, my friend. Jay Apollo, you guys know him in the community. Great to have you to join us today, my friend.
Good to be here. Thank you, Nick.
So I want to start the discussion. I want to show you guys this because Kwame Ture talking about how, like, any analysis that talk about these problems that does not put the blame on our enemy is a waste of time. And that is what RBN is here to do. We had enough of these boutique leftists, these people who can make a good analysis over our system, the ruling class, and the oppressed. But at the end of the day, they tell you to vote for these people. They support these people through strategies, through their messaging, through the people they tend to attack. This is the crimes of the Democratic Party. I kind of want to give you guys thoughts on this because liberals right now in the Democratic Party has been 100% emboldened by the progressives kneeling to them, essentially being PR agents for them, manufacturing consent that progress is possible through the Democratic Party. So Bernie Sanders gave cover for the Democratic Party to shift to the right the way they always plan. Now, in this tweet I'll read, I'll pull it back up here soon. But you have the story I'm gonna cover with CJ maybe tomorrow. We have this clip of this person trying to frame the Willow Project, the Alaska oil drilling project, as pro-humanitarian, pro-environmental. Now, I've seen this throughout the Biden administration where they take unhinged right-wing policy and then they package it as progressive, and I see a lot of people who fall for it. You have the George Floyd Policing Act that AOC even went on MSNBC and said it was a good thing. The George Floyd policing bill that gives more money to the police. You have the bank bailout that Ro Khanna and all the liberal progressives are apologizing for. They are now saying it's not a bailout. You have kids in cages became migrant overflow facilities. We had to fund the IRS to go after rich. The Democratic Party is complicit with unhinged far-right policies, and then the Democratic Party said, we're doing this for social progress. We're breaking the rail strike as a favor to labor. You guys see how the Democratic Party get away with rhetoric and get away with crimes that Republicans wish, because Republicans straight out do it, but then there would be outcry, there would be people protesting. You get pictures of AOC crying on her social media about the migrant overflow facility. Now all this stuff is okay. Now all the things just A-okay, 100% fine. Bernie Sanders 100% okay with endorsing and supporting Joe Biden in 2024. So this is the problem with people who even say they will call out the Democratic Party every once in a while. Like you have like a Sirota who may write a story exposing the corruption. And then at the end of the day, if you tell people to support these people who are complicit with our suffering, the people who literally run our cities, our government, like look for the blue states, look at the homeless populations. If you look at those people who are responsible for that, the people who write about those crimes, they turn around and say, those people are the lesser of two evils. Like Kwame Ture said, your analysis means jack shit if that's your conclusion. I want to get Zoya in here. Anything you want to add? I'll open that to the panel before we start our first story. We have a few things we're going to cover. The Republican Party melting down over DeSantis Ukraine comments. That's going to be wild. Zoya, Andrews, Jay, I'll open the panel. Anything you guys want to add before I move on?
Well, on Biden, he just blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, causing an ecological disaster. He broke the train union strike. He's handing over pristine Alaskan wilderness to big oil, something that Trump couldn't even achieve. And now he's bailing out venture capitalists while he's antagonizing China and funding an endless war in Ukraine. I mean, if this is the lesser evil, and we are going now, towards election season. So get ready to hear all of Biden's amazing achievements, even though he broke every campaign promise and recently admitted that big oil was the one that wrote his platform for environment. So all of these corrupt politicians now want our attention and now want our donations. And someone who is not even a leftist by any standards, not an anti-imperialist, not an anti-capitalist, Marianne Williamson now expects to have the support of the left. And I will say, for people who want to support her, for people who are completely invested in electoral politics, go ahead. If you still want to organize on line 3 protests and getting them out of jail, I will work with you. If you want to work on abolition, on anything, I'm happy to work with you. But what I will say is a red line that I think I want to stick to is that we should not be telling working class people to donate to a dead end campaign that is going to give PR to our issues, because our issues already have majority support of Americans, including Republicans. We don't need more PR. We need people who can put these things into policies, and the political will does not exist. The system is rigged. It will not allow for it. So we have to organize outside of the system. It is valuable to have insiders, but I don't want a single person giving up their grocery money for false campaign promises.
Zoya is too powerful. Zoya's love. Zoya's life. Jay, Andrew, anything you guys want to add before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I'll say that I've worked for AOC's campaign, I worked for Bernie's campaign, and a few other progressives campaigns. I have maxed out to them. I've knocked doors for them. I've done all kinds of shit for them, and I think it was time and effort wasted. Yeah, I honestly think it was time and effort wasted. I'm 100% open for them to prove me wrong, but they're not going to prove me wrong. I'm just not confident on that. So yeah, I mean, absolutely don't spend your grocery money, your hard-earned money on these campaigns. It's a dead end. It absolutely is a dead end. So that's what I want to say that real quick. And the other thing that I want to say was something you touched on real quick about the bank bailouts. I sent you an article, I think maybe an hour ago, about how Gavin Newsom owns 3 wineries, all of which are clients with Silicon Valley Bank. Yeah, and on top of that, his wife runs a charity, and on that charity, the board of director of one of the charity is the president of Silicon Valley Bank. So
here, speak on this, because you sent me this earlier. And I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want you to speak on this. Look at this. California Governor Gavin Newsom has had personal accounts with Silicon Valley Bank for years. 3 of his wineries are clients. The same with Ro Khanna, and that's what we called out on RBN, is his investments, his stock portfolios on SVB. Criminals are governing us with blatant conflicts of interest. Go ahead, Jay, if you want to speak on this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm going to say, Silicon Valley Bank, they very heavily donate to Democrats more than Republicans. So they're getting bailed out under Joe Biden's administration, 100%. There's no denying that. So Joe Biden did say that, the bank managers will not get bailed out. That's bullshit. They're getting bailed out. They literally fund Joe Biden's campaign. They fund all Democrats' campaigns. Yeah. They're 100% getting bailed out. I saw a quote earlier today from economist Michael Hudson, who's fairly good on these sort of issues. He said the best way to rob a bank is to run a bank. So no, they're getting bailed out. At the end of the day, a private bank is a private company. They only exist to serve themselves, their own bottom line. And the only thing that gets trickled down in this economy is the burden of cost. We're gonna have to pay the cost, basically. The 99% is gonna have to bail out the 1%. That's the only thing that gets trickled down in this economy. So, despite what Joe Biden says, despite what anybody else says, the taxpayers are going to have to end up bailing these banks out one way or the other. That's despite what Joe Biden says. There's
the game is rigged. If it's
absolutely.
If it's heads, they win. If it's tails, that you lose.
Exactly. Yeah.
These CEOs, these managers of these banks, they make millions of dollars per year because apparently they're the talent. They're the talent that drives the economy, but they crash every 5 to 8 years and make millions of dollar bonuses off of that. How is that not enough to radicalize people? I will never know. Anything else you guys want to add in? Because I'm gonna tell you guys the stories we have for today. Andrew, anything you want to chime in on?
Yeah, just real quick about the Willow Project and about the fact that Democrats with just kind of slick talking can get done a lot more dangerous shit, especially domestically, than Republicans. The Democrats under Obama were trying to push through drilling in the Arctic really close by. I haven't looked on a map to see exactly how close the Willow Project would be to where Obama was trying to open up drilling in the waters outside of ANWR, which is this the Alaskan National Wildlife Refuge. That was Obama doing that. It's consecutive across multiple different Democratic administrations, and the only thing that stopped or at least delayed drilling in the ANWR area and other oil exploration to decide where to drill, go and look around, see where the oil is richest, was there was this large Shell oil company offshore drilling rig that came to port in Seattle to be repaired and outfitted to go up into the Arctic. And a ton of people got together, including my friend Lee, who founded the Heron's Nest, and they organized tons of people to learn how to do water safety and paddle maneuvers. And they got together with a few different local tribes and brought their canoes, and like hundreds and hundreds of people in canoes and kayaks, plus these big traditional cedar canoes, went and blocked parts from getting to the ship. And they were protesting on land and on water simultaneously, to the point where the port canceled the contract with Shell, and Shell left to another port because they were getting fined thousands of dollars a day. And it's like that's a non-electoral solution that had a massive political positive impact in Washington State. But one more quick point about Democrats being slick talkers is Biden, right when he came into office, he issued, I want to say, 15 executive orders that all said kind of nice things. But if you actually dig into what the executive orders did, it was next to nothing. So he canceled private prison contracts for federal prisons, but expanded in the new ICE contracts, expanded private prisons for these migrant overflow facilities that AOC is suddenly fine with. And he also canceled an expansion of the Keystone XL pipeline that kind of goes right through the Midwest. It brings heavy crude from the Canadian and Montana shale deposits down to Texas to be refined. He canceled an expansion to that pipeline so he could build political capital with the people who are still naive enough to buy into this Democratic duopoly strategy. And he's now using that political capital to push through the Willow Project. He's trying to build more political capital, manufacturing consent, bringing on people to say, oh, the Willow Project, it's actually good for the environment. It's good for indigenous people.
Yeah, I got to find that video because that's part of the gaslighting, where their messaging now is, oh, we do this because we care about the environment. This is a humane thing to do. But it's actually wild to see. I'm going to show you guys this because now this is some of the reaction. Speaking of the Willow Project, these are the people that I warned. These are the activists that try to keep their distance from the RBN community and the RBN left because we're too radical, because we propose solutions outside the Democratic Party. There's Gen Z for Change, an absolute joke of an organization. That's essentially a Democrat group. But look at this tweet here in response to Biden and all these weak progressives who support the Democratic Party. Like, there's not even no declaration of leaving the party in any of these statements. No harsh criticism of Biden in any of these pathetic statements. We are Gen Z for Change, a coalition of Gen Z activists who have worked with the president of the United States for the duration of his presidency. Despite our working relationship, we want to make one thing clear. The approval of the Willow Project is a slap in the face to young people across the country. In the statement, we where is the call to leave the Democratic Party? Where is the harsh criticism? Oh my God, Joe Biden, you're so mean to us. That is not a criticism. And I'm so tired of this mealy mouth shit that comes from these progressive groups. Because if this happened under Donald Trump, and we've seen it. If this stuff happened under Republicans, these people will be shouting from the rooftops. They be calling him corrupt. They be calling him evil, a danger to humanity. Meanwhile, when Joe Biden does it, oh my God, he slapped me. My face is slapped. Fuck out of here. Here, AOC, I'll read this. I'll pass to you guys before I get to some announcements. AOC, look at this mealy mouth shit. The Willow Project has been estimated to produce 287 million tons of carbon dioxide, the equivalent of the annual emissions from the 76 coal plants, and cause nearly $20 billion in climate change-related changes. The only acceptable Willow Project is no Willow Project. So in this tweet, AOC managed to talk about the Willow Project without ever mentioning Joe Biden. Without even mentioning the Democratic Party. Oh my God, I can't believe this Willow Project is happening. The Willow Project is so bad. If only we knew who was doing this to us. Remember what Kwame Ture said at the beginning of this clip. Any analysis that does not direct us to the enemy is a waste of time. Do you guys understand? Anything you guys want to add? Open panel real quick, and then I do some announcements if you guys want to pass it.
We live in a country where 30% of Republicans that were surveyed wanted to bomb Agrabah from Disney's Aladdin. So, we live in a very, by design, uneducated country, and because of that, the masses are easily led astray, and all Biden has to do is posture and use leftist rhetoric, and then like his marijuana thing where he basically in the end pardoned nobody, but it's still going to be hailed as a policy win because he framed it that way. And all of these bills that get passed, like Build Back Better or workers' rights, everything is actually the opposite of what the opposite of what the bill is named. Yep. So we are constantly lied to, and unless you're actively in politics, people just don't know what's happening.
Well said. So Jay, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of people basically who voted for Biden, who supported Biden, basically be shocked that he would fucking do this. I mean, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden both said they're not going to stop fracking in one of the debates, like proudly said it. Nothing they've done has shown that they care about the environment or anything like that, So for people to be suddenly shocked by it is it's just insane to me. And the other thing is, I'm just, that tweet by AOC, I'm just fucking sick and tired of these motherfuckers pretending they care, they give a shit about the environment.
Yeah,
like, you're funding war.
Campaign. You was on the AOC campaign. So you know how much you betrayed us.
She's not the only one either. I mean, like, you're literally funding a fucking war in Ukraine. Well, more places than just Ukraine, but like you voted to, give weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. And, the Pentagon's the biggest polluter on the planet by far.
Yeah.
So I don't want to fucking hear it from these motherfuckers who vote to give money to the Pentagon, who vote to give money to these defense contractors, indirectly anyway, who vote to essentially further these conflicts, who vote to increase the Pentagon power, and then talk about like, we should like try to protect the environment, all this bullshit. Just get the fuck out of here. Like, I mean, you're
like, what was the carbon emissions on that Ukraine package that you voted for the weapons deal that you guys supported?
Yeah. I mean, like an Abrams tank goes through like at least 70 gallons of fuel per hour, one Abrams tank. So I mean,
but when it comes to war, they all in.
Yeah.
Andrew, anything else you guys want to add? I want to get to an announcement. Andrew, anything else? I'll give you a second. Anything else you want to add real quick?
Oh, just real quick. I'm going to come back another time with some dirt on where the funding comes from for this Gen Z for Change.
Here we go.
But real quick, I'm just going to read a little bit from them. They say, we're the place where the creator economy and progressive politics intersect on social media. they basically go on to talk about how they have an electoral policy and advocacy campaign where they're just trying to get Gen Z to vote. They're trying to get Gen Z to vote for Democrats. But yeah, this organization reeks to me of quasi-governmental agency funding. You know,
Yeah,
an organization like this in another country would be getting funding from, and even maybe inside the US, they're going to get funding from something like the National Endowment for Democracy. And what they are is they're stalling. They're trying, you know, Gen Z and millennials, which I'm a millennial, I'm kind of like right at the tail end.
Yeah,
a lot of us are, far more of us are fed up with capitalism than previous generations because there's just really nowhere else to go for us once we know a little bit of accurate history. And so what they're doing is they're like, Gen Z is still young enough. If we can just get in there and try to steer them away from real politics, that's what this organization is built to do.
Yeah, well said. I want to just do some quick announcements real quick. Hopefully you guys enjoying the stream. Please like, share, and subscribe. I've seen some people who even said we've been getting shadow banned. People been unsubscribed, so make sure you guys check that as well. It helps the stream out. Also, you guys can support us on Patreon in the description. Venmo Revolutionary Blackout. Let's help pay Aaron as well, who make these amazing graphics for us. So that's how we usually get it done, with direct donations via Venmo. You guys also can send to my Cashapp, SocialistMMA as well, and we make sure that gets to our team. Much love and support to all you guys that make RBN possible. Now, our few stories we have, I'm going to pass it to Andrew a little bit later because I wanted to do some reporting on AMLO, and you're going to see a common theme throughout this stream is Lindsey Graham being fucking crazy, where Lindsey Graham, he wanted to send troops to Mexico. And part of that is because AMLO been rebuking the United States in a pretty harsh way. AMLO condemned neoliberalism, condemned the Cuban blockade, condemned NATO. So now all of a sudden they care about sending troops to Mexico. We'll cover that here later. There are also the story we may get to where Jim Crow Joe strikes once again, where the Supreme Court already ruled this new campaign the Biden administration started, where they trying to use marijuana to disarm people because they said once you get caught with marijuana, that voids the Second Amendment. So even though you have red states like mine, red states, Josh Hawley is our senator, but we got legalized marijuana, but it's not legal on the federal level. So now Joe Biden is using that as an excuse to disarm people. And I want you guys to guess who that impacts the most. We get to that later. The first story we're going to get to, and I can't wait to talk about this with you guys, we're going to get to some Ukraine war. And the Uniparty is moving in one direction on this. The most interesting thing I've seen in the last few weeks is this conflict between Trump and now DeSantis. DeSantis following Trump's lead because he realized, like, bro, if I run against Trump as the neocon, as someone who's supporting the Ukraine war, while Donald Trump is telling the truth, Donald Trump, who is a moron on a lot of things, but he's telling the truth on the Ukraine war, he realized he'll get his ass beat. The same way Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, and Mike Pompeo stands no chance. No chance at all. Feel free to interrupt me anytime, guys. I'm just having fun. But you have now DeSantis coming out and saying that, yo, Russia is not in our best geopolitical interest. And he's actually a weasel in the way he says it, because the way he says it, he doesn't really condemn U.S. imperialism, U.S. intervention. He's just upset at where we're directing it at, which is a red flag in itself. But it's good to see Republicans call out the Ukraine war, calling for accountability into the funds. But the liberal and the Republican establishment has not been taking this well at all. At all. I'm going to show you guys one of the biggest shit libs. Here, Rob Reiner here. This is one of many these tweets. We shouldn't be shocked when Trump and DeSantis side with Russia. So you know your side is bad when the side that is calling for ending conflict is the pro-Russian side or the adversarial side. If you're calling for peace in a conflict, but you're the traitor of the state, what does that say about the position of the state? What does that say about your position, Rob Reiner? That people that say we should end this conflict, that killing countless Ukrainian and Russian lives, that's the side you're against. And he also says, when at your core you want a white Christian nationalist state, that's who you side with, and fuck democracy. But not only the liberals, and there's you have Sean Hannity. This is why this part is very interesting. Now, let me share this tab here. Because as Trump and DeSantis is telling the truth on Ukraine because they actually want to win, they actually care about winning, I cannot emphasize enough that the majority of the Republican establishment is for the Ukraine war. Look, you have Rand Paul, who's the only senator who voted against it. You only had like a handful, like 10 to 12 Republicans that want to have oversight over Ukraine funding. So they are loud. Don't get me wrong. The Marjorie Taylor Greens are loud. The Matt Gaetz are loud. But the Republicans, the 80%, the 90% of them that support the Ukraine war, they're just chilling. Remember, we live in a capitalist dictatorship. Other than a few high-profile races, most races are decided in this country. Most races, 90% of the races in this country are not competitive. What a great democracy we have. So then they trick you because they put the competitive races on there. They put Stacey Abrams, Georgia race. They're like, oh my God, look how competitive our democracy is. But they ignore the fact that literally most congressional races are decided by whoever the capitalists want. So there are a lot of Republicans who are safe, who do not have greater ambitions, who just sitting there in Indiana, sitting there in Utah, sitting there in some small district in Texas. Like, fuck that. I'm funding Ukraine. That's the part that a lot of people forget. The Republicans are not against this. The Republicans are not anti-war. Republicans voted against ending the occupation of Syria. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because now I'm showing you guys the conflict between the neocons and the DeSantis Trump wing that's calling for the end of the Ukraine crisis. This is Sean Hannity. Actually, I'm going to show this one first. I actually messed the order up. I'm going to show this one first because this shows – I didn't mean to show that one first. This shows the Republican senators. I almost went out of order. I almost fucked that up. But this is the Republican senators' reactions to DeSantis' comments. And this segment is gold because you get to see Morning Joe and the neoliberal reaction to this as well. So I'll just play a little bit of this, and then I'll pass it to the panel for you guys to chime in.
Senators are pushing back against one of the leading voices in their own party for controversial comments he made about the war in Ukraine. Yesterday,
controversial for who? You see the framing? What did Trump or DeSantis say that is controversial? What they said is actually was commonly repeated. DeSantis says there's no American interest in Ukraine. You had neocons that said that for years. Yeah, Henry Kissinger, who was later bought up by NATO, and now he flipped, who he now support the war. But for years, leading up to the conflict, he said we don't have no geopolitical interest in Ukraine. Yeah, I would love to do some neocon shit. Trust me, I'm always down. I'm always down for some war shit, but it doesn't make sense here, right? Hey, do you guys want to chime in? Anyone just going once, going twice before I move on?
Just
let's go Andrew Zoya. I'll make sure there's order. Let's go Andrew Zoya.
I was just going to say real fast, there's not so many people I could think of who contribute to the maintenance of a white Christian fascist nation than Rob Reiner and his circle of people. When you have full-throated support for a president like Biden, who is, let's repeat, the last like real OG segregationist who is still in U.S. politics in a big way, who at the end of every single speech, he can't remember how to read the teleprompter right, but he can still remember he's supposed to say, God bless America and God protect our troops. What are our troops doing around the world? They're upholding white supremacy as a tool to maintain capitalism and extract resources. So you have these people who will, again, they have absolutely nothing differentiating themselves except for slick language. And they know that, it's popular now to be a little bit anti-racist in my rhetoric. So I'm going to do that to own Trump because that's actually all I have. Because we actually do all the same things. If our parties are putting in policies, if it's Biden or Trump, the policies are the same. The only difference is what I tell you while you're getting screwed.
Well said, Andrew. Zoe, you have anything to chime in? And Jay, you can go after her if you want.
Well, Fox News watchers are going to be critical of anything Biden does, but ultimately the reason that they're sometimes siding with Russia is because they think that we need to save our strength to fight China. So these are not anti-war people. They are just anti whatever the Democrats are doing at the time people.
Yeah.
And that's what we call reactionaries, because at the end of the day, there's no consistency, there's no ideology, and they're just going to repeat whatever is on mainstream media.
That's why I said in my stream earlier, and I'll pass to you, Jay, after this. When we covered the Trump comments on how he's the only president that can say he want to prevent World War III, and all these Russia and Ukraine comments that are actually good. I told you guys before I started my analysis, my gut instinct is I don't trust them. Like whenever I see these quotes, I'm like, I don't fucking believe you, man. Like I just don't. There's nothing in me that believes these lying capitalists, people who want power. We've seen Trump lie about these things all the time. We saw him lie and call out Saudi Arabia over the corruption between Saudi Arabia and the Clinton Foundation, and then he took president and became one of the biggest bitches to Saudi Arabia. If people always say Trump, there's no wars that started under Donald Trump. That's only because even the military-industrial complex stopped him. There's a story that came out that said Trump wanted to invade Venezuela. Trump wanted to invade Venezuela, and then the neocons in the government was like, no, we can't do that, bro. So when people say that Trump never started a war, it's because the establishment actually stopped him. And imagine the chain reaction that was started. Trump invaded Venezuela, which is a Putin ally. That's why the Russiagate never made any sense, because he wanted to overthrow Nicolas Maduro, who had close ties with Putin in Russia. Anyway, that's a long story. Don't get the people who think Trump is anti-establishment. That's why my gut reaction, and I would acknowledge it if I'm wrong in like 2 years, I will acknowledge it. I'll take it as a growing lesson, right? But my gut reaction right now is that Trump's going to say this shit because he's smart, he's going to win, and then he's going to fold to the establishment. But like all Trump supporters do, Trump will make up some bullshit explanation on why he backed down from his stance on Ukraine, and Republican bootlickers, Trump bootlickers will just buy it up. They'll say Trump using 3D chess. That's what he did all the time in his administration. I'll call out Trump people for him lying, him hiring Goldman Sachs people. Like, oh, it's 3D chess. So my instincts tell me that's what's going to happen again. He's going to become president. He's going to escalate with Russia and China. He'll come up with a bullshit excuse, and Trump people are going to run with it. Meanwhile, we're going to be pulling our head out. Like, remember when Trump said this about Ukraine? Remember when Trump said this about war? But that's my instincts. Jay, anything you want to chime in, and we can continue.
Yeah, I mean, like, these guys are focusing on words more than actions. Yeah, I mean, Trump said, like, oh, I'd like to get along with Russia, but at the same time, he was contemplating sending nuclear submarines onto Russia's coast. He was heavily criticizing the construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline back in 2019. He was bombing, Russia's allies left and right in Syria, that extrajudicial killing of Qasem Soleimani in Iran, and also considering going to war with Iran until a fucking neocon stopped him. I think it was John Bolton. I could be wrong on that, but it might be John Bolton. And then on top of that, just I can't remember the exact details now. Here's what it is. He pulled out of several anti-nuclear proliferation treaties with Russia. Yeah. The INF treaty and then the Open Skies treaty. Like, I mean, this is.
That used to be my go-to back in the day. Back when I used to argue with Russiagate libs before I had a platform, that was always my go-to. See, if he's pro-Putin, why is he arming Ukrainian rebels? Why is he pulling out nuclear arms treaties? Why is he trying to overthrow Russian allies in Venezuela? Why is he opposing Russian interests in Yemen? Like, there's all these questions that it never makes sense. But Jane, last thoughts, and I'll get to the next part of the story. We can get back to the clip.
No, but that's the only thing I really want to say is, like, people are focusing more on words than actions. I'm like, the actions say one thing and the actions barely get any coverage because they are in line with the establishment ones. Like, I mean, if Trump wants to fucking bomb Syria, I mean, that's in line with the established ones. They're not going to cover that in the news, So, and that's just the bottom of the problem of, like, most people's reaction. They focus on words more than problems, like words more than actions. And it's just sad to see. But yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
Money as well. This is a great comment. He escalated with Russia. I forgot. I'll be honest. I forgot if it was Noam Chomsky or Chris Hedges that said it. One of the two. They said that Donald Trump is the most anti-Russian president since Bill Clinton. And you had liberals going around pretending that he was weak on Russia. A lot of liberals forget that it was Barack Obama that was Mitt Romney was like, man, we need to focus on Russia. And Barack Obama was like, chill, bro. Russia's cool, bro. Russia's not our enemy no more. Liberals completely forgot about that. Remember that famous debate moment? Where he said, I don't know if you're stuck in the Cold War era, but Russia's not our enemy. That used to be the Democratic Party position. Then they flipped. And this is it's a long explanation, but it started because of Russiagate. They fuck around and started Cold War tensions to cover for Hillary Clinton losing an election. That's a funny story. But let's get back to this clip because this is.
Let me just say one thing real quick, though.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So Trump wanted to arm the Azov Nazis even more, and then Democrats in the House heavily tried to stop him. They heavily tried to stop him from arming the Azov Nazis.
And that's when that's around the time when Ro Khanna sent out that tweet, right? And
Ro Khanna and yeah, exactly.
They used to call that out when Trump was in charge. But go ahead, Jay.
But I mean, designating the Azovs as terrorists has its own problems because of the War Powers Resolution from 2021. I'm sorry, 2001, I think. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, I mean, you had Trump literally wanting to arm Nazis, and then Democrats tried to stop him, but they don't use that as an example of him. They just ignore that never happened, so because that goes against the narrative of Trump being a fucking Putin puppet. But yeah, it's just fucking bullshit at the end of the day. Just they have the narrative and they have to fucking stick with it at all costs, basically.
Yes, I want to get back to this segment. This is the Republican senators melting down, and you can see Democrats, the Morning Joe program. You can see their narrative too. So I watched the first 3 minutes of this. So I think that's only how far we can get into this. I'm gonna give you guys a reaction because a lot of the quotes here are funny and very revealing. And I want to focus on Lindsey Graham too, because you can hear Lindsey Graham in this segment. Lindsey Graham is crazy as motherfucker, man. That motherfucker is crazy. And he's calling for essentially World War III with Russia right now, because the whole American drone thing that's going on right now. So let's listen to this, and I will get your reaction.
A handful of GOP lawmakers broke with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who on Monday dismissed Russia's invasion as a, quote, territorial dispute and said defending Ukraine was not a vital interest of the United States.
Where's the lie? They be presenting these info oh my God, he told the truth about this. How dare he? So funny when they do that. Oh shit!
It's not a territorial dispute in the sense that any
Marco
more
Rubio.
than it would be a territorial dispute if the United States decided that it wanted to invade Canada or take over the Bahamas.
Yes, that's really how dumb our opposition is, guys. That's how much they lack historical context, and they ignore the fact that there's been a conflict that was provoked by the United States since 2014 in Ukraine. And so, in this example that he gives, he said, this being a territorial dispute would be the same as the United States invading Canada. Well, the problem is, where's the recent conflict between the United States and Canada? Where's the Civil War in Canada? Where's the hostile power? Where's China? Where's Russia, the DPRK, anyone, Iran? Is there oppositional powers in Canada that's propping up a resistance movement, a fascist movement in Canada? These are the contexts that will make this analogy make sense. But I think someone want to chime in. Go ahead, Andrew. I think we're Andrew, right?
Yeah, or I was just going to chime in, or where's the couple of 100 years where Canada and the United States were the same country under multiple different governments?
Yes.
There's just no comparison.
Literally no comparison at all. And this is the dumb, ridiculous shit that Ukraine flag wavers and pro-war neocons like Marco Rubio say that does not stand to scrutiny. Which is why you never see the NATO left want to debate us on this. This is why you see AOC run like a coward when Marjorie Taylor Greene called her out for a debate. Because imagine this issue comes up and you got someone like DeSantis and Trump and these right-wingers who, because this issue is easy to get right, they get it right because of that. Not because they're enlightened. They're not a hard issue to get right. So how do you defend that coming from Bernie Sanders' position when you got a quote-unquote right-wing populist grilling you on this? How do Marco Rubio deal with someone like Tucker Carlson grilling him on this issue? I would love to see that. Marco Rubio and Tucker Carlson defending his Ukraine position. He will fold because they use lies. They use false analogies. Just comparing the United States invading Canada to Ukraine and Russia, and all the historical context here, ignoring NATO encroachment is beyond ridiculous. But I'll let the video continue, and feel free to just interrupt, guys, and I can pause if you guys want to chime in with something.
Then it would be a territorial dispute if the United States decided that it wanted to invade Canada or take over the Bahamas. Just because someone claims something doesn't mean it belongs to them. This is an invasion.
I just think that's a misunderstanding of the situation. This is not a territorial conflict. This is a war of aggression. I think Governor Florida has been a great governor, but in my opinion, if you don't get Ukraine right, this is a chance to stop Putin before it gets to be a bigger war.
I would not agree.
This is a chance to stop Putin before it becomes a bigger war. Said the people who are provoking Russia into a nuclear war. What they were saying makes no sense. Lindsey Graham said these people have poor reading of the situation. Said the people who have absolutely no historical facts or logic on their side. They just say U.S. propaganda jingoisms here. There's nothing that makes sense. Just the talking points. If we don't stop Russia now, man, it's going to lead to a greater war later. How about we stop NATO? Eastern expansion. That will stop the aggression. As you guys are bombing pipelines, people like China is making peace. And everyone else sees it. Let's continue. This video is really hard to get through. Very, very hard video to get through. Let's try, though.
With them on that. I think it's pretty clear. Historically speaking, the importance of keeping Vladimir Putin in his lane.
Most certainly it is of concern to me. We've got a number of individuals who are looking, I think, at the 2024 race, and we'll find out whether or not the rest of them feel the same way.
So now you got these Republicans who've been in hiding, who got the order from the weapon defense contractors who fund their campaign. You come out and defend this war right now. I would love to be in some of these private meetings, read some of these emails, because I think there is panic going on in the Republican establishment that leads these people to come out and say this stuff that they've been avoiding saying. Like Tucker has been anti-Ukraine war forever. You got Trump talking about Ukraine forever. Now the heat is on. Now these people have to come out and rebuke DeSantis. It says everything. And Lindsey Graham said, like, if you want to be president, you got to get this issue right, because it's a uniparty. You can't cross the military-industrial complex. You can't cross the U.S. empire if you ever wish to be president in this country. They're saying the quiet part out loud.
Senator Graham, who you just heard there, also had this to say: the Neville Chamberlain approach to aggression never ends well, comparing DeSantis to the British Prime Minister who appeased Adolf Hitler. This is an attempt by Putin to rewrite the map of Europe by force of arms. Meanwhile, Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas tells Politico, "I am disturbed by it. I think he's a smart guy. I want to find out more about it, but I hope he feels like he doesn't need to take that Tucker Carlson line to be competitive in the primary.
Yes,
it's important for us to continue to support Ukrainians for our own security." And John Hellman, a number of different things here. But,
yes, indeed.
That's the guy. This is the guy. And the funny thing, I never noticed it until the Russell Brand video. Remember the Russell Brand destroyed the MSNBC guy on Bill Maher? That's the fucking guy. Now I can't unsee it. Watch this propagandist in action. Watch this propagandist.
So many different places to go here, but let's start with Ron DeSantis, who sounds so Trumpy.
Trumpy.
Well, yeah, first of all, let's start with this.
Calling for peace is now Trumpy. According to the liberal establishment. Democrats lost their goddamn mind. Calling for... Are they going to run on this? If they do, they're going to get mollywopped. Imagine Andrew, Zoya, and Jay, the Democratic Party run on a call for peace being Trumpian. You got Bernie Sanders getting speeches like, oh my God, Donald Trump and DeSantis is pro-Trump and pro-Putin because they want to end the war in Ukraine. They're going to get destroyed with this messaging. Let's continue.
Governor DeSantis, welcome to the NFL. The United States Senate filled with people who have either run for president, like Lindsey Graham, or think they could be or should be president, like almost everybody else in the United States Senate. All of them welcoming the what they see as the provincial semi-hick governor from Florida to what they think of as their province, and sort of saying, hey, you might want to like read a couple foreign policy, at least white papers and some history before you start talking in the context of international security. So there's a little bit of that, first of all. Second,
You guys hear what he just said? You guys see the worship of the establishment that comes from these people? He said these senators are pretty much showing Ron DeSantis what the national stage is like. That if you get the foreign policy stuff wrong, they will criticize them. So you got these Democrat establishment shills that are now propping up Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, and saying that and pretending that American people actually care about their opinions. Andrew, I see you on mute. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just going to say the other part that stuck out to me is that, I think this guy is probably actually too stupid to know that Ron DeSantis was a military human rights attorney who basically was hired to cover up torture programs in Iraq and Guantanamo Bay. So there's not many senators or governors who probably are more familiar with what actually the military and foreign policy of the U.S. is than Ron DeSantis. Right. But this guy either doesn't know that because he's a fucking idiot, or he actually doesn't want you to know that. And instead, he's going to paint Ron DeSantis as a semi-hick. Yeah, he's a semi-hick governor. More than anything else, this guy loves his padded position in the professional managerial class for contributing absolutely nothing of value to society. So he's going to make fun of Ron DeSantis because he seems like maybe he doesn't come from my caste in society.
And thing is, like, Ron DeSantis is as bourgeoisie as it gets. But this guy is so this dude is so classist. It doesn't matter if you're bourgeoisie in Florida. If you anyone in Florida as a hick, that's next level hatred and love of your class. That even someone who is bourgeoisie like Ron DeSantis is not good enough for you because you view anyone in the South as hicks, uneducated hicks. And the other assumption here, which is hilarious, is that he assumes and presents the idea that people like Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham are actually sitting there pondering on a globe in a strategic table, actually looking at Ukraine and Russia, understanding the history. These senators and the people in charge are the dumbest people, the least intellectually curious people. They are told their positions. They are given a script and they read this shit. Do you guys really believe Marco Rubio is sitting there, what are the geopolitical ramifications of expanding NATO? How can we achieve peace in Ukraine? How can we win this war? Marco Rubio not thinking shit. But he presented this information like, hey, welcome to the big leagues. If you want to be a senator, you got to be well-read. The exact opposite. The dumbest people are senators and politicians. It's Hollywood for ugly people. That's the amount of benefit doubt and amount of credit that I give politicians, right? Let's continue the clip unless you guys want to interrupt.
Do you mind if I get a word in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just interrupt, guys. It's all good.
All right. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I wanted to say, though, like I wanted to say this earlier, but all of these motherfuckers, they pretend like as if all this whole shit started literally in February of 2022.
Yes.
No, it did not. It started back in like 2014 and arguably even earlier. So you guys are literally just going to pretend that, Ukraine was just not bombing the Donbass for the past 8 to 9 years. And on top of that, there was a hashtag going around that said, I think I can't remember exactly, but it went something like, "Where were you for the past 8 years?" Yeah. And that got flagged as Russian propaganda.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ!
That got flagged as Russian propaganda. Like, this war started. Well, it got started. I think it got started before that too. But like, to talk about the backstory of this war, just to say that, Putin woke up one day and like, I'm gonna invade Ukraine. It is what it is. Here's my army, whatever. Like, and people actually fucking believe that fucking bullshit. Like, and not understand the historical context of everything. It's just, that's what these guys are going with. And that's the one thing that Trump touched on, kind of, sort of, more than anybody else, more than DeSantis, more than any other person running the GOP primary. Because that's the one thing with Trump. He will he will fucking push any limits he needs to if he thinks it'll be an advantage for him. Yeah. And Trump is a piece of shit. Like, so I just want to be clear about that. I don't believe it because
Trump wanted to win so bad, bro. He say whatever. That's why I don't
exactly.
Like, he's not analyzing this shit. You know what I mean? It's not like it's not weighing on his heart. Like, he sees the opportunity, he's taking. That's just my position. We see if I'm right. If I'm wrong, I learn from it. But that's my position. I'm pretty confident in that. Let's pull this back up. There we go. I'm getting better at the producer shit, fam. Leave a like and subscribe, guys. This is a fun conversation. Let's continue this video. We only watch a few more of this. We got quite a few receipts. So hopefully you guys are good for 90 minutes. I think we're good for 90 minutes today. Because we got another segment or two. Let's continue here.
Second of all, like, it's hilarious to see people. Lindsey Graham says this is the Neville Chamberlain approach. Somebody else, one of the other senators there, I think Cornyn maybe said, I hope he doesn't help take the Tucker Carlson line. You'll note none of them are saying what is also true. I hope he doesn't take the Donald Trump line, because that is really kind of what all this is about, is Ron DeSantis. I don't want to say the words right flank, because those words don't mean anything anymore in the Republican Party, but let's say the MAGA flank. Ron DeSantis wanting to make sure that if he's going to be the guy who's going to be one-on-one with Donald Trump, that on.
And these pathetic liberals keep using these words that make no sense, like MAGA wing of the party. You got Biden that keeps saying stuff like MAGA Republicans. I have a question for you guys. What the fuck is a MAGA Republican? You mean the Republican Party? Why do they keep separating? And then they pretend the other faction has any sort of support by doing that. By saying there's a MAGA wing, and they always pretend like, oh my God, there's the Mike Pence wing, the Mike Pompeo wing. Nigga, that shit does not exist. During Trump, then DeSantis, then there are people who like DeSantis and Trump, there are people who like Trump and DeSantis. There's that clip that came on Fox News that was viral where this guy went to this DeSantis heavy area because he was like, who do you guys want? You guys want DeSantis, right? They was like, I kind of like both. I kind of lean toward Trump. So the party is people who like Trump and DeSantis. They live in this fantasy land where never Trump Republicans like Liz Cheney still have any fucking say in the party. I just want to point out. Let's continue. I told you, me and CJ, we watch this shit. This shit is hilarious to us. Like, it's unbelievable that people watch this shit as news. Can't even make through 3 minutes without explaining to you guys why this shit is horse shit.
On issues like this, there's no daylight between him and Trump. On issues that resonate with the MAGA part of the base. Donald Trump would
the MAGA
say
part of the base. You mean the people who vote for them? You guys don't see, like, they trying to pretend that Trump is doing something that's off the mainstream. No, DeSantis and Trump is doing this because this is popular among Republican voters, because most Americans are now asking questions about the Ukraine war. And you guys got to use a lot of wheezy words to get out of the fact that your position is not popular.
Same thing, maybe in slightly different terms, different words that Ron DeSantis would say about Ukraine, because that is where a lot of the MAGA base is skeptical about U.S. involvement in this dispute, about spending money on this dispute, and so you have Ron DeSantis trying to make sure there's no daylight between him and Trump. The problem is that a lot of the United States senators here are willing to criticize DeSantis or anybody.
Who gives a shit? You guys see the bubble that he lives in? So most people are turning against the Ukraine war show by polling, especially Republicans. So what he is saying is, yeah, I know the people are against the Ukraine war, but man, I don't know they'll handle the scrutiny of these Republicans who are deeply unpopular. Go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
I was going to say, he just agreed with you. He's like, yeah, it's. I guess this is happening because most of the Republican base are asking questions now because they're idiots. I guess that's his point.
Yes. I see if I think we can wrap this segment up. I want to see if who else chimes in real quick. Yeah, I think we can wrap it there. I think you guys get the gist. This is the more complaining and bitching about Trump. I want to share a few other receipts just for a second time. This is Sean Hannity. It's not only the senators, it's all the establishment media apparatus that is like, man, we allow this anti-Ukraine, anti-NATO shit to go on for too long, almost. So this is Sean Hannity pretending that Joe Biden, who is being critiqued from the left by Trump and DeSantis, by the way. Here's Sean Hannity trying to pretend that Biden's being weak on Putin. Look at this video.
Russia and Putin's hostility and aggression against our country, the United States, has now reached a dangerous new height. Now, tonight, the question is this. What will your President Joe Biden do? Is he going to offer maybe another waiver for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, put more sanctions in place? Putin's not going to care because he's selling his energy and getting filthy rich. He's selling it to China, the rest of the world. And all of this comes as a new axis of evil is emerging between these three top geopolitical folks.
Axis of evil. That's the line that's coming from these people, that Russia, China, Iran is the axis of evil, even though they have shown incredible restraint in resisting war against the West. If the West had it their way, Iran would have flipped their lid and created a pretext for war with Israel and the United States. If the United States had their way, China would have flipped their shit over the Taiwan visits and arming Taiwan, and war would have already started. If the United States and them had their way, Russia would have been flipping invaded Sweden and Finland and Poland. But it's not. They keep holding back because they want to protect the global working class from endless nuclear war. That was China going around the world like, have you guys seen this U.S. shit? This shit's crazy. The Biden administration, who has been extremely unhinged on this issue, Sean Hannity is trying to pretend is now weak on the global stage.
China's dictator Xi is now scheduled to hold a very rare but significant meeting with Putin in Moscow. So how much you want to bet they'll probably be trading jokes about just how pathetically weak America's president is? This is beyond embarrassing. This is danger to the safety and security of the entire world. America's enemies are on the move. They are aggressive. They are consolidating power. They're creating partnerships and alliances that the world better take note of while Joe Biden, your president, is asleep at the wheel. Russia and Putin took out an American drone over international waters. And I ask again, Joe Biden, what are you going to do?
So, what goes on in the mindset of the Fox viewer when they see Tucker Carlson on Ukraine? And then I think correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think Sean Hannity is the hour after Tucker Carlson, right? I don't know exactly. Maybe the 2 hours afterwards. Maybe I don't got cable, so I don't know. But he comes after Tucker Carlson. So you hear Tucker obliterate the Ukraine narrative, and then Sean Hannity comes on afterwards and like, oh my God, we got to go to war with Russia. Because what are you saying? What are you saying? You see what Sean Hannity wants to hear, because here's crazy ass Lindsey Graham again. I told you, you're gonna see this man a lot today. Crazy ass Lindsey Graham. This is what Sean Hannity wants to hear, and I'm showing you guys this because this is the neocon wing of the Republican Party that apparently, the squad and Bernie Sanders is standing lock in arms with Lindsey Graham now. There are Lindsey Graham Democrats now. There are Mike Pompeo Democrats. I shit you not. Listen to what Lindsey Graham says here.
I'll say that if you ever get near another U.S. set flying in international waters, your airplane would be shot down. What would Ronald Reagan do right now? He would start shooting Russian planes down if they were threatening our assets. I'll say that
essentially,
if you ever get near
World War III,
another,
and Lindsey Graham was trending after this because everyone, even from the right, from the left, was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Look, breaking. Lindsey Graham just essentially called for World War III, saying if Russian planes get close to U.S. drones again, we should shoot down Russian planes. It's funny how Republicans claim to be anti-war until President Biden decided not to escalate things. Then they all decide that we should be aggressive. And this shows this conflict that's going on with the establishment, where you have the MAGA, the very small percent, I cannot emphasize this enough, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Martin Taylor Greene, like a handful of others. Very small percentage of the Republican Party. The rest of them are aligned with Lindsey Graham and Sean Hannity. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this shit plays out here. I want to pass to you guys because we got we'll cover Mexico and AMLO next. I know Andrew got a lot to say on that. I'll pass to the panel. Zoe, I'll start with you. Zoe, anything you want to say to wrap this segment up?
Oh boy. While China and Russia are pursuing prosperity, Hannity is appealing to toxic masculinity, talking about how Biden's big old pussy who's just not standing up to Putin enough. It's really sad, the anti-intellectualism that takes place in political discord in this country. This false left-right paradigm is distracting people from the fact that the U.S. is a corporate dictatorship. And a 2021 study showed us that 53% of people living in shelters and 40% of unsheltered people were employed. So people who are working cannot make enough money to afford housing. Meanwhile, these plutocrats get threatened and the government bails them out in 48 hours. Meanwhile, we're supposed to be paying attention to this red-blue game that every network is launching. They are robbing the working class under our noses, and this duopoly keeps us divided amongst the working class instead of uniting on issues that impact the entire working class. And what's really missing from discourse is a class analysis. All of this is done to divide us and prevent the formation of class character. We live in an exploiter society, which is divided into the exploiter class and the exploited class, or the ruling class and the ruled class, because they own the means of production. So at some point, we're going to have to prioritize organizing outside of the system and pursuing our own liberation instead of fighting each other over this pretend rhetoric, which still stokes war at the end of the day, because Hannity and Micah will all tell you to go to war.
Well said, Zoya. Andrew, Jay, anything you guys want to add before we wrap the segment up? Jay Hall, make sure you unmute.
There you go. I think I'm good now. Yeah, I mean, like there were segments in that clip that basically said that were basically criticizing Russia of taking that drone down and whatnot. I'm like, why was there a U.S. drone that close to fucking Russian soil in the first place? You know, like. Why are you guys not talking about that? Like, what the fuck would happen if a Russian drone was that close to our soil? Like, do you think we'll take that shit sitting down? I mean, come on, you know. That's the one thing that I'm like just so fucking frustrated by. Like, you guys are making a big deal about like all this sort of intervention on close to Ukrainian border. You know, that's something I think either Hannity said it or somebody in his clip said it. Like. You know, of just further and further escalation into his border. There's no way we would take that shit down.
And they expect Russia and China to take the stuff that we would never accept. Like they defend their territorial sovereignty and protect their own interests. How dare they? But then they will openly say the United States is expected to defend their interests and continue to be offensive all over the globe. And that's going to show with the next story that I'm going to cover as well. But go ahead, Jay, if you want to finish your thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is the country that has a fucking the Monroe Doctrine. Like, we have the fucking Monroe Doctrine. We can literally take as an act of war anybody that comes even an inch into our fucking hemisphere. But at the same time, we're allowed to fucking go into other countries' hemispheres, like very close to fucking their soil, and then if they have anything to say against that, then that's an act of war. Like, that's some fucking ass backwards thinking that. Just insane to me. But yeah, that's all.
Andrew, anything you want to add before we move on?
I mean, I don't know how much more there is to say. I think you guys are covering a lot of what I would say. I'll just repeat one more time something we were talking about earlier, which is when Trump was in office, you had AOC calling the concentration camps what they are. There is slave labor and forced sterilization going on in those concentration camps. And it's all for profit. It's all run by Geo Group. And now that Biden is president, you have a faction of the Republicans who are, proclaiming limited anti-war sentiments because they know that it's popular. That's it. That's all that it is. It's when it's easy for them, because they don't have power, they can repeat something that they know the people are really picking up on. And like you and Jay and Zoya mentioned earlier, Trump did try to start a war with Iran. The reason that Bolton probably pulled him back from actually launching a war against Iran is because Bolton's like, whoa. The whole point is to get them to do it. Like you said earlier, Nick, they're exercising restraint. And the U.S.'s goal, at least the neocons' goal in foreign policy, is to push that restraint past the limits to where their country's government will believe that it's actually in their interest to take military action. And at that point, the U.S. is like, well, we fucking got you. If you guys remember Bill Hicks, he's that old comedian who died in the 90s. or early 2000s. He had that line where he's like, "I'm so sick of the United States acting like the bad guy in every Western movie."
Yeah,
where he throws a gun at the feet of an unarmed man and says, "Pick up the gun." It's like it's that shit every time.
Yeah, that's back when comedians actually used to challenge power. Now most of them are fucking bootlicking cunts to the Ukraine war now. Now I will read this comment here. Thank you. This is a good one here. We shoot down weather balloons and claim it was an act of war, with China is still extremely pissed off. After the balloon incident, China essentially went to their allies. They had an internal conversation where they're essentially like, okay, the United States is unhinged. But nothing we can do to stop them from doing this. We might well solidify our support with our allies. They increased their military budget, I think by around 10%, the highest increase that China ever seen. So China, after the weather balloon incident was such a big turn for China, because after that they realized there's no negotiation. There's nothing they can do to stop the United States from being unhinged. That's why they started to reach out to Saudi Arabia more. They started to grow their influence in the Middle East. They started to really solidify these allyships, right? Because they saw this clash. They knew in that weather balloon incident, the West really fucked up. Because China, it was that in the Taiwan incident. When Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, they continued escalation. Now China's not holding back no more. Now they're making Biden administration like chumps, and that played a very large part of it. This is a great comment. Thank you for that one. And I got two quick stories. I'm actually gonna get to the AMLO one next, because this actually I want to make this point after the last segment we just did, because you had Sean Hannity pretending that Joe Biden is weak, and Joe Biden has been using and flexing military power and his influence over his allies in a very negative way, where he's twisting the arm of Japan, Australia, and India to follow U.S. demand. That's why India and United States relations has soured, because India is like, we're not going to sacrifice our best interests in order for you to go to war with Russia. We're going to continue our trade with Russia. We're going to continue our trade with China. And the United States is very upset with them for doing that. But countries that are not doing that, countries that are not doing what Turkey is doing, that fight against NATO influence in the West, Australia and Japan has been 100% cuts of the U.S. empire. And to be honest, a lot of it's not even their fault. When I had a friend explain this to me, like when you look at the political power the United States have in Australia, they will destroy Australian politicians. They have Japan on lock. Japan, who've been ruled by their neoliberal parties. Shinzo Abe, who recently died, was really closely connected to Nera Tanden in the Center for American Progress, really friendly with a lot of neocons. That's why when Shinzo Abe died, everyone was extremely sad in the establishment, because that was someone who was very close with the West. So Japan, Imperial Japan is back. A country that mostly demilitarized has now doubled the military spending on order of the United States. So the United States is forcing Europe, Germany to militarize, forcing the UK and other countries to spend more on their defense spending than ever before. And this played a big part of why the West wants to expand NATO, because NATO requires countries to spend at least 2% of their budget on weapon spending. It's all corruption. And it's unbelievable that the NATO left is not saying that, which is why I have no respect for them. No respect. It's the most obvious corruption story that they are missing. Now let's go to what I'm bringing up here. Biden is selling U.S. nuclear machines, submarines, to Australia to counter China. Now, Caitlin Johnstone, if you guys don't subscribe to her, you guys should. She has done a lot of great writings over how the United States essentially forced Australia to take their geopolitical positions, and the propaganda in Australia regarding Ukraine and regarding China is probably just as bad as the BBC in England, in the UK. They have been aggressively pushing war against China, aggressively in an unhinged way. Now they are sending these submarines to Australia for regional, and this from the tweet from NPR, for regional security and stability. My question is, what about sending nuclear submarines that escalates war against a geopolitical war power? How does that lead to regional security and stability? It does not. The United States is putting everyone in danger. And now this is China. Response to this, and let me take this off here. Once again, you have the establishment, the liberal establishment, even the Fox News establishment that's pretending that China is in the wrong here. Look at the headline. China issues ominous threat to Biden over the Australian nuclear submarine deal. I don't know. What seems more ominous to you guys? Sending nuclear submarines to Australia, or someone saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that? You guys see how ridiculous the framing is here? When they come from Fox News, anytime Russia or China does anything that makes sense to protect their sovereignty, they say, oh my God, they're escalating. Are we sending nuclear submarines over here? Now, this is another one here. China warns AUKUS. I think that stands for US, UK, Australia. You've gone down a dangerous road with nuclear subs deal. This comes from Politico. China saying the fucking obvious. And China has been way more aggressive against the West. They've recently gone on tour and said the West is responsible for pursuing endless war, destabilizing their economy and the economy of Africa. They recently rebuked the United States on their occupation of Syria. So China had enough. And this is why you got Western people predicting this conflict, because as China continue to criticize and defend itself against the West more, the more you're going to have Biden, Tucker Carlson, DeSantis, and these people be bloodthirsty towards them. A few more receipts, and I'm going to get to the last ammo story before we wrap up. China says US, UK, Australia nuclear submarine deal put allies on path of error and danger. Once again, obvious to everyone, right? Which is why NPR framing, the framing that comes from the United States, makes more sense. We're going to send weapons for security and stability. This is the gaslighting. We're going to bomb for peace. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery. That's what coming from the West. So my last video I want to show, I want to give you guys a response to this. There's Caitlin Johnstone. Now, this is John Mersheimer, who they have these moments, and I would love to know the psychology of it, where they just fucking say it. I don't know why they do it. It's almost like, you know how Dr. Evil and Austin Powers, you know the James Bond villain? In these movies, I always roll my eyes when these villains go do these long monologues. This is my evil plan. Ha 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 ha. You guys see how evil and brilliant we are? I'm always like, who the fuck actually does that? Meanwhile, over at the ruling class, these motherfuckers do it all the time. To be fair, this is this guy bragging over the influence that the United States have over Australia and why Australia is extremely hawkish toward China. Listen to this unhinged psychopath.
Now, the question is, what does this all mean for Australia? You're in a quandary for sure. Everybody knows what the quandary is. Security-wise, you really want to go with us. It makes just a lot more sense, right? And you understand that security is more important than prosperity?
You could not literally. That's probably one of the most evil quotes I've heard in my life. So this guy is saying, imagine how much Australia would benefit from being a positive trade partner with China. If they have positive relationship with China, and that's obvious to everyone. If you have positive relationship with China and the United States, it'll be beneficial. If everyone got along, she'll be great, right? But the United States want to be on top. They want to impose their geopolitical hegemon. They don't want any alternative to capitalism. So this is him saying, I know that shit makes sense about peace and trade, but you're going to give up your prosperity in order for your security. That's the most gangster shit. Like, the mob has nothing over the U.S. government. You guys serious? Feel free to interrupt, guys. I think Jay, you're unmuted. Do you want to chime in before I continue?
I was just going to say that he's saying, like, you want to go with us or we'll kill you. Yes. Because that's really what America does.
So I'll play that part again, and then I'll play the whole video through after that, because I want you guys to hear that part again. And it gets even more unhinged, because this is his evil speech moment. Where was this thing? I gotta look at the tweet. CIS.org. Fuck is that? Sorry, I'm blanking on. I gotta look that up. I gotta see what conference this is. But let's listen to that part again because unbelievable.
You're in a quandary for sure. Everybody knows what the quandary is. Security-wise, you really want to go with us. It makes just a lot more sense, right? And you understand that security is more important than prosperity, because if you don't survive, you're not going to prosper. Survival is of the utmost importance because you can't pursue any other goals if you don't survive, right? So security's got to be number one. So you'll sacrifice prosperity for security, right? That's what will happen. That's why you'll be with us. Now, some people say there's an alternative. You can go with China, right? You have a choice here. You can go with China rather than the United States. There's two things I'll say about that. Number one, if you go with China, you want to understand you are our enemy. You are then deciding to become an enemy of the United States. Because we're talking about an intense security competition. You're either with us or against us. And if you're trading extensively with China and you're friendly with China, you're undermining the United States.
Jesus fucking Christ.
You're feeding the beast from our perspective. And that is not going to make us happy. And when we are not happy, you do not want to underestimate how nasty we can be. Right? Just ask Fidel Castro.
Is there any doubt over who's the bad guys here?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, am I unmuted? Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. John Mersheimer is not, like, because I've heard various different lectures from him in the past. He's not really like this neocon kind of guy. I think he was phrasing what he said in the point of view of the U.S. empire.
Oh, I see. I must have misread it.
Yeah, so John Mersheimer, he's been amazing on the Russia-Ukraine. Like, he's put out really good videos on it, on saying how the U.S. and how NATO, propagated this war, essentially. So I think he was.
I see it now. I must have missed the sarcasm. So I mean,
so I think that's what he's trying to get at, and he's not wrong. Like,
he's not wrong.
There's a famous quote that goes something like, "It's dangerous to be America's enemy. It's even more dangerous to be America's ally," which is like, which I guess kind of goes towards what he said. Like, he was basically saying, you got to fucking bend to our knee. You basically have to fucking bend to our fucking knee. Otherwise, we'll fucking we'll unleash the hounds of hell on you, essentially, is what he's saying. Like, I think he was just, kind of like just.
Yeah, I see what he's doing now. I see what he's doing. I see, because he was speaking on a sarcastic way. I see what he's doing now. But the point still stands, because that's essentially been U.S. policy with them saying submarines, the insane propaganda. Once again, Caitlin Johnstone does a great job covering this, like, because she lived in Australia. The propaganda there is like the level of the BBC, the level that we have here in this country. Whenever I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world, I still believe that. The most common pushback I get that's hard to rebuke is when people say the BBC. I'm like, yeah, the UK is really fucking bad. Apparently, Australia is really bad. I still think the United States is the worst because they're the most effective, I believe. Because I think people see the BBC, I think people see the Australian news, and they still yeah, this shit propaganda. This shit state TV. There are people that still watch the U.S. shit and they think this shit is real, and this shit is the most cartoonish shit you ever see. That's why we show it to you guys. We laugh at this shit, and people in America think this shit is real. That's the difference. You know what I mean? Everyone have propaganda, but people fucking believe our shit for some reason. It's ridiculous. So, anything else that you guys want to add? I want to get the last story we're gonna do today, and then we wrap up. I'm gonna pull some receipts from AMLO in Mexico. I want to pass to you, Andrew, because I know you've been covering this as well. Let me get the shit. Hold 1 second here. I think my 1 second. I gotta just pull it up again. I'll pull this up here because this is the one link that works. And while I pull anything up, I want to pass it to you, Andrew, because AMLO has been extremely critical of the United States. I set up this way. He's recently come out with a statement that condemns neoliberalism, with the United States being someone who he directly calls out. He's led a coalition with Latin American countries to condemn the Cuban embargo. Now, just like Lula and a lot of other Latin American leaders, he is weak on Haiti. And that's why when people went after Lula for that, I was like, yeah, I'm not getting mad at you guys for criticizing Lula for that. But I want you guys to understand that's a problem for every leader in Latin America, not something unique to Lula. But other than that, between him wanting to call for peace with NATO and Ukraine, and the rumors, it haven't been confirmed officially with Mexico and BRICS, but they have praised BRICS. And there's been rumors within BRICS. That's where the source came from, where they said there's rumors that Mexico's in BRICS because there have been these talks. And not official yet, but this is the kind of stuff that has the United States worried and now making them more oppositional to Mexico. And you also had Mexico that led the charge, AMLO that led the charge. Now I remember condemning the United States for the Venezuela occupation. They demanded that Nicolas Maduro be invited at Biden's America Summit. Do you guys remember that when Biden had the America Summit? And then AMLO led the charge calling out the fact that the United States excluded Venezuela. So AMLO has been flexing on the United States in a way that Mexico leaders never do, because it's not in their best interest to piss off the superpower right next to you, right? So here, Lindsey Graham, and Andrew, I'll pass to you because that's my intro to this, because I know you got a lot to say on this. This is Lindsey Graham to pitch bills sending military after Mexico cartel. Once again, Lindsey Graham being crazy as hell. Andrew, you have anything you want to add to this? Now I'm going to find the rest of the story as you do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. The two main cartels that not only Lindsey Graham but other Republicans, and there's probably some Democrats who are also neoconish enough to support this type of bill, but I haven't heard them say it out loud yet. But they're talking about, there's fentanyl coming over the border. That's basic. They're basically trying to paint that as terrorism against the United States. And the two main cartels that they're talking about are the Sinaloa cartel and the Gulf cartel. There's other ones too. But I think the main things to say about this are, it's no secret that the United States intelligence agencies, both domestic and foreign, are big into drug trafficking. It's how the CIA has paid for a lot of its budget so that it can keep it more off the books, really since the beginning of the CIA. But I think that in specific examples, I sent you a few articles earlier. I can put them in the.
Yeah, I got them pulled up now. I just need a second. I'm glad you stalled for time for me pretty well, Andrew.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll pull this one up. Let me know which order you want to go to, because you sent me a few ones. First one, actually, I want to share this one because this is what I said earlier, and I'll pass it back to you. This is where AMLO, the Mexican president, rebukes U.S. State Department over the protest comments. The U.S. State Department, he went after them in Mexico. There's this story as well. AMLO says Mexico is more democratic than oligarch-run U.S. Condemns State Department meddling against electoral reform. They must have took this other link down. Let me try to get this one. I'm trying to pull the one up where he condemns neoliberalism. Maybe might be my internet, but I'll pass to you, Andrew, while I get that pulled up. You want to comment? Do you want to comment on this story here?
Well, yeah. So what this story is about is the electoral reform. So there's a lot of different areas of Mexican domestic policy and also foreign policy where they've become very oppositional with the United States just by passing their own plan. Morena is a very left-wing progressive party. They didn't exist before 2012. In 2006 and 2012, AMLO won the numerical votes of both of those elections while he was running under the PRD, which is an older party that he used to be a part of. And then when he was screwed twice in a row, they created Morena. And so the electoral reform has been a big central part of their platform. They're also, Zoya just posted in the chat that Mexico earlier last year, they nationalized their lithium reserves. They actually, a day before that, they tried to pass a sweeping energy reform that was going to renationalize the entire oil industry, the entire electrical grid, and also boost production of hydropower, oil, nuclear power, and solar. And when that didn't pass, it got a majority of the votes, but it didn't pass because it required a super majority of votes to get the constitutional amendments that it needed to pass. And so because that didn't work, they just did a portion of it. But they have renationalized their oil company, Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex, and they have also nationalized the lithium industry. So Canada and the United States are pushing back. They're trying to flex through NAFTA 2.0 to force Mexico to allow more foreign investment into their oil sector and into their lithium and mining sector. They're also now criticizing this electoral reform, where basically the PRI and PAN are the only two parties who had been in power before Morena for about 100 years. Well, I guess like 70 years. But it was kind of all out of the process of the Mexican Revolution, created what became PRI. PRI became corrupted, and it ran Mexico like, it was just completely privatizing everything ever since the late 70s, early 80s. And as a result, the electoral system in Mexico was drastically inflated with more money than it actually needs to run elections, because everything that the PRI and PAN were doing beforehand was just embezzling money and handing state assets to private individuals who are their friends. And so there have been huge protests in Mexico against election rigging since the 80s. If y'all want to look up a journalist, Regina Perez, I can't remember her other last name. She's a journalist who was really super adversarial, really good investigator since the 80s, and she was murdered in 2012 for her work, and her murder's never really been solved. But one story that she broke that was huge, that kind of built her career up to a national level, was the rigging of the 1986 election. And so this has been a huge problem in Mexico for a long time. So AMLO is cutting the funding to the electoral body and reforming how it works, because he's trying to cut out the really blatant election rigging that PRI and PAN have been doing for decades. And because of that, the old neoliberal parties, they're putting on, the best protests that they can. They're not really giant. They're definitely paying people to go there. And so the United States and some of their semi-private, semi-state media mouthpieces are saying, oh, AMLO's trying to become a dictator. He's trying to cheat in the elections, when actually this is just fulfilling his promise to clean up the electoral system, which has been a giant popular sticking point in the Mexican population for decades. And so there's pressure on energy, there's pressure on mining, there's pressure on AMLO to continue fighting the war on drugs, and now there's pressure on this electoral system. So I just said a bunch of shit there, but those are the three main areas where the US and Canada are pushing back at present. And this bill from Lindsey Graham, it's nothing new, but I'll pause for a moment. But the next thing I wanted to bring up is that the US is arming and funding.
Yeah, I'll bring that up because I have some reason, these are literally my last links I can read, because some reason my browser is really fucking up. So after these last receipts, I literally can't pull anything else up. Luckily, I have that one working. So I'm going to ask you about this, because this is very interesting. Lindsey Graham and Republicans are manufacturing consent to send military in Mexico because of the cartels. Meanwhile, the Gray Zone reported U.S. Special Forces trained Mexican drug cartels linked to decapitation, torture, and rape. So the U.S. Special Forces trained these people. Do you want to speak on that, Andrew?
Yeah, so this originally, well, I don't know if originally, but this story in particular goes back to the 80s. And in the 80s, you had the U.S. training death squads all across Latin America to murder indigenous people and socialists and peasant farmers in El Salvador and Nicaragua and Guatemala and in Mexico. These people that the U.S. Special Forces trained, they were, I think, a paratrooper division in the Mexican military. And their first mission while they were still in the military was to wage really brutal warfare against the Zapatistas. The Zapatistas in the 90s, they're a group of indigenous people, communists, socialists, anarchists, and also just sort of unpolitical peasant farmers who basically declared independence from Mexico when they passed NAFTA, because they knew that NAFTA was going to wreck their economy. So these people that the U.S. Special Forces were training, they went to war against the Zapatistas in the mid-90s. And then after their tour in that campaign had kind of died down, they all defected en masse from the military. All these hundreds of people that U.S. Special Forces trained in really brutal warfare tactics. They defected from the Mexican military en masse, and they went to join the Zetas, who are sort of affiliated with the Gulf Cartel. And the Gulf Cartel, along with the Sinaloa Cartel, are one of these two cartels that the United States, most blatant neocons are talking about going to send the military in to fight right now. So there's a lot more I could say about this. The other thing I'll mention, if you can't bring it up, it's okay. People can find it if you go on antiwar.com. There's an article from 2011 about the Fast and Furious. It's called Operation Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I was trying to pull it up. Unfortunately, my browser, I can't pull anything up for some reason. I don't want to mess it up because I don't want to mess the stream up. It may crash. So if you want to explain it, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. So the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department, the ATF, they had a plan to give a bunch of illegal weapons to arms smugglers to take into Mexico, and they all went to cartels. And then a bunch of these weapons with American serial numbers, who are basically military grade weaponry. The Mexican police, the small portions of the police that actually were trying in the 80s not the 80s, the 2010s in Obama's middle of his administration, who were actually trying to push back against the cartels. Then they kept finding all these pretty heavy arms with serial numbers, then very easy to trace back to America. Again, there's no arms manufacturing in Mexico. Most of the weaponry is coming from the United States. And so then the ATF kind of got under pressure from different news agencies, especially independent journalists in the United States. And they were like, we did it on purpose. We were going to give these weapons to arms smugglers and let them get to cartels. And that way we could figure out who's in the cartels if we can arrest them and they have one of these guns. But that was a really thin defense for their behavior. What they were doing was arming the Sinaloa cartel. And so you have the two major cartels that these neocons in Congress are talking about going after in multiple material ways, have had training, armament, and more support from the United States government and its various organizations. So when AMLO says that the State Department should mind its own fucking business when it's talking about the electoral reform, I don't know if he's commented yet on the neocons talking about invading Mexico. But that is a really serious charge. It's not something that's just words. That's just to threaten Mexico rhetorically. I mean, it's pretty widely well known that about a third of the whole territory of the United States used to be part of Mexico. It was stolen from Mexico in a war of aggression in 1848, from 1846 to 1848. And so for them to say we have to invade Mexico to prevent fentanyl from coming over the border and prevent the cartels from killing Americans who are going to vacation in Mexico, that is absolute nonsense. That is just a pretext to enforce Mexico to keep the capitalist policies that prop up the U.S. economy. And when Mexico is nationalizing its energy production to be energy sovereign, and when Mexico is trying to root out the corruption from their electoral system so the U.S. can't just as easily as possible tee up whoever they want to be the president of Mexico, who's going to give absolute deference to the United States and pass whatever version of NAFTA they want and do whatever militarized drug policy the U.S. asks them to, it is getting scarier. And so AMLO is honestly more, to my mind, like a non-aligned figure. The U.S. and Mexico are each other's biggest trading partners. And I think that AMLO has tried really hard to, in the energy reform bill that they were trying to pass, that would have renationalized multiple sectors before they had to fall back on just the mining and lithium reform. That included a ton of business with U.S. Engineering firms and corporations. And they'd even included, which they still did, they purchased for almost $1 billion, I think, an oil refinery in Texas to use for Mexican energy production. And so, AMLO has to tread very carefully, but I think that it's almost kind of reminds me how like Putin used to want to work with the West in the earlier parts of his presidency. And then after so many times of just trying to do kind of minor sovereign decisions for Russia, eventually became very anti-West in his rhetoric and his stances. I see a somewhat similar trajectory with AMLO, although AMLO's been in politics for a long time. He's been a socialist for his whole time in politics, so it's really not exactly the same. But he was trying to be more friendly. He thought, Biden isn't rhetorically as shitty as Trump right now. Maybe we'll do some business. Maybe we can soften up the United States on some issues, and we can take our own decisions that might be more abrasive to somebody like Trump or Bush, and do our own thing in these other areas. But he's increasingly finding out that that's not true. And so then at this point, he has no reason to hold back. And so he's saying, yeah, I'll give asylum to Julian Assange, stop prosecuting Julian Assange. And he's saying, I'm going to lead the Latin American countries to go against the U.S. blockade of Cuba because it's against international law and it interferes. It's a threat to all of our sovereignty. He stood up against some of the Americas, like you said earlier, for the same reason. And so it's partly just a result of AMLO being who he is and Morena being a party that is new, built off of really popular momentum, and is accomplishing things that he's running into friction more and more with the U.S. It's kind of inevitable, but it is also the U.S. and Canada and others getting increasingly worried that Mexico is doing things that are in its own best interest, which means less profit for capitalists from around the world who have their industries extracting from Mexico.
Great breakdown, Andrew. I'm gonna read the super chat. I'm gonna get Jay and Zoya's final thoughts, and we wrap up. Appreciate you guys' time. You guys know I had to come back with a banger episode after our hiatus. Nick at Night is back. I am still floating and thinking of another time slot. Sometime this week we doing Wednesday evening. I gotta think about that because I might add another Nick at Night show. Let you guys know in the chat if you guys be interested in that. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. Also, if you guys want to support these shows, we got a link up to our Patreon and our Venmo to pay our people in the back as well. Much love to all you guys. Thank you for $4.99. Steve, my own brother, was a narcotics detective in Los Angeles in the 80s. Ran into the CIA several times dealing crack. This is no BS. Look at the story of the real Rick Ross, not the fake rapper. The real Rick Ross that has detailed stories about the CIA and intelligence dealing drugs. Literally everyone in the hood know about it. And it was one of the things that you hear growing up as a conspiracy theory, like, hey, the CIA was in the hood, bro? Especially in Missouri, like, what the CIA did in St. Louis, bro? Like, you hear this stuff growing up, and now it's crazy hearing things you hear growing up being confirmed. Like, everyone in the black community hear these stories. The police selling drugs with us. The crack cocaine cowboys of Oklahoma and Texas. Like, these are the local legends that are later proven true, which is why I don't know why anyone trusts the intelligence agencies at all. Great super chat. I want to pass to Zoya and Jay. We talked about a lot today. I'll give you the opportunity to just chime in on anything or any last words that you guys have before we sign off today.
Well, first of all, you can read on the Department of Justice website about the Contra and CIA drug dealing, funneling crack through the Los Angeles gangs and Bloods and Crips. It's all in writing, so it's definitely not a conspiracy theory. And it's no accident, of course, because a quarter of all arrests in America are related to drug offenses. So we keep this war on drugs going. And it empowers the prison industrial complex, which leads to corporations exploiting people for labor. But to wrap up, I wanted to say something a little more hopeful, that just to remind people, there was this whole thing on Twitter where Eli Lilly got trolled about lowering insulin prices, and then they said that it was all not them and someone else. But ultimately, that stunt launched such a PR shaming cycle that Eli Lilly had to cave and lower insulin prices. So just something as simple as that had a material impact in the world. And I'm saying this because I always love to leave people with encouraging words. And it can be something as simple as just being there for somebody for emotional support, or cooking for somebody, or watching their kids, or helping them get their homework done. But get involved in your community, build solidarity, and be there for each other. Right now, with the circumstances that we're living through, an act of love is revolutionary. And Che said that.
Yes. Zoya is love. Zoya is life. Zoya is too powerful. Always great hearing Zoya's send off. Jay, any final thoughts, anything else you want to add before you wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, to what Andrew was saying earlier, Mexico is a country that is trying to enter BRICS. That's Brazil, India, China, Russia, and South Africa. I mean, you can't have an economic alliance at our southern border and for us to not react to that, you know? So, and on top of that, they're trying to nationalize their lithium and uranium industry. So a lot of our actions essentially go towards that, to get Mexico to get away from BRICS, in order for us to basically take over Mexico's lithium and uranium industry. So that's one thing I want to say to that. But as far as the closing note goes, nah, I don't have a closing note. I mean, like, it's things are going to shit. I don't have a closing note. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And Andrew, any last words that you have before we sign off here?
I'll keep it real quick. I'm with Jay and Zoya for sure. Things are going to shit, and therefore we need acts of love. Grow some food in a fucking cut open milk carton in your apartment, or if you have more resources, make it pretty and make it bigger and share that food. And also free Leonard Peltier. He's been in jail for like 48 years now, thanks to frame up and continued pressure from the FBI. I got him on my shirt, so you can see his pretty ass face. But that's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's all good. I want to pop you guys out. Appreciate everyone from watching. Once again, Nick at Night is back. We go live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central. Once again, I'm thinking about adding another time. Let me know in the chat. Leave a comment what day you guys would like to see. I'm still thinking about that, because I always want to make sure I'm not streaming the same time on RBN Brothers and Sisters. We always send you guys up with strong content. Sabby and JB show is tomorrow. If you guys haven't seen the Tuesday stream, it's always great when we have Sabby and JB together, because Tuesday was like Sabby and the JB show with the Nick and CJ show. That was Tuesday. Is Thursday, you're going to have a Sabby and JB show. I hit CJ up. We see what we can do tomorrow. Got a few other guests I'm working on. And, yeah, this is what Nick and Night is. Bring my homies here. Talk about some foreign policy. Talk about how much we hate the empire. Make sure you guys support us. Like, share, help us beat the algorithm. And you can support the network on Patreon or via direct donation. Venmo, Revolutionary Blackout, Cashapp, SocialistMMA. Much love, much appreciation to you guys. Have a